In Brazil, security measures are being enforced around the capital, with police installing roadblocks around the central mall, where thousands of people are expected to come out in support of the nation's president, President Jair Bolsonaro. The Independence Day march, expressing anger at the country's Supreme Court, has raised fears that it could become a repeat of the Capitol riots in Washington in January. Matt Bevan takes a look at the backstory around this.
G'day, Fran. Yeah, you might remember when Jair Bolsonaro was elected president of Brazil back in 2018, he was often referred to as the Trump of the tropics. And while there are a lot of differences between Trump and Bolsonaro in their life leading up to their election, Bolsonaro's time in office has had some pretty eerie similarities to Donald Trump's time in office. To start with, you'll remember that despite winning the 2016 US election fair and square, Donald Trump claimed there had been widespread voter fraud, which robbed him of victory in the popular vote.
The president does believe that. He has stated that before. I think he stated his concerns of voter fraud and people voting illegally during the campaign. And he continues to maintain that belief based on studies and evidence that people have presented to him. I think, look, Jeff, I've asked and answered this question twice. He believes what he believes based on the information that he's provided. Yes, ma'am.
In Brazil, Bolsonaro did something similar, telling his supporters that fraud robbed him of an outright victory in the first round of the 2018 election, meaning that he had to go to a runoff second round. This was something he blamed on the country's system of using electronic voting machines instead of paper ballots, and it's a message which caught on with his supporters.
I believe Bolsonaro was elected president in the first round of the 2018 elections and not in the second round like the official results say. Lawmakers and judges must respect the will of the people who want paper ballots, not just digital ones.
As president, Bolsonaro has had a pretty similar experience to Trump in that while he's talked a lot about significant policy change, a resistant Congress has prevented him from making much headway there. His main success has been in not doing things, for example, not enforcing environmental regulations in the Amazon, which has led to widespread deforestation. He also followed Trump when it came to coronavirus. He pushed back against restrictions and mask wearing. In Brazil, like in America, there was an enormous COVID death toll under his watch, and both presidents caught the virus and were hospitalised. But back to claims of election fraud. In the lead up to the 2020 election in the US, Donald Trump claimed the only way he could lose was if the election was rigged against him.
Are the election results only legitimate if you win?
We have to be very careful with the ballots. The ballots, that's a whole big scam. We want to make sure the election is honest, and I'm not sure that it can be.
Then when he did lose the election, he claimed there was widespread voter fraud, then encouraged his supporters at a rally to march upon the Capitol, which they then did, causing the scenes we can all remember from the 6th of January this year. Immediately after that Capitol riot in Washington, Jair Bolsonaro was asked if he still supported Donald Trump.
You know I'm close to Trump, so you know what my answer is. There are a lot of reports of fraud. A lot of reports of fraud. There were indications of fraud in my election too. I should have won in the first round.
Since then, a lot has changed for Bolsonaro. After leading national polls for the first 2 years of his leadership, there was a significant change. Former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, known generally as Lula, was cleared of corruption charges which had prevented him from running for office, leaving the door open to a run against Bolsonaro in next year's election. Immediately, Lula took a massive lead in the polls, which he has maintained for all of this year. Bolsonaro, in response, doubled down on his attacks on the electoral system, demanding a vote to change the constitution and mandate paper ballots instead of electronic voting. This was rejected by the Congress. Opposition politician Henrique Fontana explained why.
Since the first day in power, President Bolsonaro has been progressively destroying Brazil's democracy. It was time to stop him, and we just did, by rejecting the proposal to change the voting system.
Henrique Fontana speaking to Al Jazeera there. The day of the vote, Bolsonaro held a military parade outside the Congress building, which many saw as an attempt at intimidation. Bolsonaro is a former military man who talks a lot about military coups in a country with a history of military dictatorships. Now, Bolsonaro has no evidence that there's a problem with the electronic voting system, and in fact, he may not even believe himself that there is widespread voter fraud. But the rejection of this suggestion by the Congress has given him ammunition to claim that the only way he can lose next year's presidential election to Lula is if there is fraud. This is something that political analyst Sergio Abranches says is part of Bolsonaro's strategy.
Bolsonaro is trying to do the same thing that Trump has done in the election in the United States. He wants to have the elements necessary to claim that the elections were rigged and try to invalidate them.
Last month, Jair Bolsonaro made a pretty disturbing declaration at a rally when it came to his plans for next year.
Eu tenho 3 alternativas para o meu futuro.
I have 3 alternatives for my future.
Estar preso,
being arrested,
ser morto,
killed,
ou a vitória.
or victory.
Podem ter certeza, a primeira alternativa, preso, não existe.
And I know it will not be prison.
Nenhum homem aqui na terra vai me amedrontar.
Because no man on earth will threaten me.
Today is the 199th anniversary of Brazil's independence. It's their Independence Day. And in Brasilia, the capital, a large rally has been organised in support of Bolsonaro, which many people are concerned will become a repeat of the January 6th Capitol riot in Washington. The indications are coming from an enormous push from Bolsonaro's supporters online to try and raise a large crowd and march upon the Supreme Court building. But additionally, the union movement in Brazil has come out to say that they are concerned about this, and they have been supported by a large group of left-wing politicians internationally writing an open letter, which has been published in the last 24 hours. Signatories included former Australian Senator Scott Ludlam, former UK opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn, and others. So, yeah, it's something to watch today in Brazil, Fran, as the day goes on.
All right, Matt, thanks very much.
Thanks, Fran.